He wanted to be there. He wanted to be there.
I think so.
I mean, I mentioned that I've been in contact with this guy, but I don't think it ever
Test 1, 2, 3, test. Okay.
מישהו יכול לדבר?
Test.
דבר?
כן.
עוד?
אני שתוכל להחזיק אותך. תגידו אם אתם צריכים לשמוע.
עוד קצת?
עוד קצת. כן?
כן, כן. תגיד עוד כמה מילים בבקשה.
סאונד תקין יוצא מהבקשה. סאונד תקין? כן, אפשר להתחיל? אוקיי.
אבל כולם יבואו לדבר מפה, נכון?
כן, כולם יבואו לפה. אוקיי.
טוב שנזכרתם שעה לפני הזמן.
We're about to start anytime Miri tells us. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Okay? Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming here this morning. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum, as you know, has gathered the press together since the beginning of this crisis in order to bring important information and developments relating to the hostages, which obviously is a fundamental part of the crisis in which we are currently involved, and also a fundamental part of any resolution that we hope to get to in the crisis. We have a large panel today of, and several things to bring to you. Three family members of hostages are here and will be speaking first after a short video. We have here today Ela Ben-Ami from Kibbutz Be'eri. Her father Ohad and mother Raz are hostages. We have Adva Adal from Nir Oz, whose cousin Tamar Adal and grandmother Tamir and grandmother Yafa Adal are also hostages. And we have Yoni Asher, whose wife Doron, two daughters, Raz, 4 years old, and Aviv, 2 years old, and his mother-in-law, Efrat, are all hostages. Yoni and Adval are from Kibbutz Nir Oz. In addition, we have a very distinguished panel of jurists, and today's session will focus on the legal side, on international law aspects of the hostages crisis, including the nature of the crimes by Hamas relating to the hostages, potential steps, enforcement steps that are intended to be taken. And we will also be introducing a new website that has a lot of information and video of the atrocities and abuses that we're dealing with. Let me just very briefly introduce the panel now and get out of the way. First, we have Professor Aaron Barak. For those of you who may not know, we're new to the country. He was, among other things, the president of the Israel Supreme Court from 1993 to 2006. Previously, he was a judge on the Supreme Court, the Attorney General prior to that, and a professor of law, writing in many different areas. Next to him is Justice Dorit Benish, also Justice Barak's successor as president of the Israel Supreme Court. Prior to serving on the Supreme Court, Justice Benish was the state attorney and worked in the state attorney's office for many years, including in the High Court. She headed the High Court division there. We will have by Zoom Professor Eyal Ben-Benisti, who is the Waywell Professor of International Law and director of the Lauterpacht Center for International Law at the University of Cambridge. He previously was a professor at Tel Aviv University and at Hebrew University, and is an expert on many areas in international law, including lots of issues related to the conflict here. We have Dr. Shelley Aviv-Yeni, who is a member of the international law team at the headquarters of the Families Forum. She has a PhD from Bar-Ilan University and a master's in international law from Oxford. Advocate Yuval Sasson at the end, who is a partner at the Meitar Law Firm, has expertise in defense, homeland security, public international law. Earlier in his career, he was a deputy state attorney in the international department at the state attorney's office, where he dealt with these kinds of issues as well. Finally, we have Eran Kamin, retired Major General in the Israel Police, long career in which he was, among other things, the head of the investigations division, the head of the National Fraud Investigation Unit, and much more. Those are the people. I believe that we're going to start with a short video, if I'm not mistaken, and then we'll begin with the family representative. now with the family members of several of the hostages, starting with Judicial.
Hello. Can you hear me well? Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Yoni Asher, 37-year-old. I'm the husband of Doron and the father of Raz and Aviv, which are 4 and 2, soon 5 and 3, which currently held captive in Gaza. I will just correct, we are not residents of Nir Oz. We live in the center of Israel. My mother-in-law is the residence of Nir Oz. They were visiting her without me, October 7th. And at first she was defined as a hostage, but a few later on we announced, fortunately, that she got killed. In Israel, we have a Memorial Day for the Holocaust. 7th of October was one concentrated day of Holocaust. This was our enemy's goal. That was their dream. Even for just one day, to make a Holocaust for the Jews. Since October 7th, like I told you, my wife, Doron, my 2 daughters, Raz and Aviv, were visiting their grandmother, Frat. Later on, a few days later, we got announced she was killed. During the abduction, she got killed in front of their eyes. They were abducted, went through and witnessed to a massacre, horrific sights. I have a video which I got, which showed they were on some kind of cart with a tractor, along with bicycles of children on this cart, and got taken to Gaza. I discovered that eventually on that Saturday, from this video, I recognized my family immediately, and I knew in that moment I knew for sure they were taken. I don't know what is their health position right now, and as I told you, what they seen during the abduction makes me think about if and when I get my family back, what kind of family will I get? Will I get the same 2 happy girls, little 2 balls of energy that have the happiness of life? Will I get a happy wife? What kind of family will I get? And I call it a rich man's problem right now, because I don't know, after 1 month that I haven't seen them, I don't know to describe to you if and when they will come back to me. I am very concerned about their mental position. Those are babies. You can tell now what they have been through. My mother-in-law died in my wife's arms while she is kidnapping along with her daughters. You need to understand the meaning of this kind of situation. I understand that this forum has an aspect of an international law, not my specialty, but like I told you, I hope for every one of the hostages that I'm sure that also are in severe mental, not only health position, severe mental position. What kind of family members will they get back? In God's help when they will. And I wanted to say that I wish that all of the hostages would return, and thank you for coming here today listening to me.
Next, we'll have Ella.
Hello, my name is Ella Ben-Ami. I was born and raised in Kibbutz Be'eri. I am standing here under difficult and horrifying circumstances. My parents, Raz and Noad Ben-Ami, were kidnapped on October 7th through the Gaza Strip by brutal terrorists. I will not speak of the pain of not having them here because of it's obvious. I will speak of the fact that my mom is an ill woman, very ill. She has tumors in her brain and spine that obstruct normal function in her hands, legs, and back. She is medicated permanently with a daily cocktail of medicine to help her function. She is now without them because of the human monsters that have taken her by force, barefoot in her PJ. She is supposed to have back surgery urgently. Her spine is worn away. She cannot bend over and definitely not sit cuffed on the floor. She received an infusion once a month and had missed one already, putting her life in critical danger. I don't know if she will survive. All the things I have listed are denied of her because of Hamas terrorists, along with a pile of war crimes committed in Kibbutz Be'eri where I live. Where whole families were massacred, girls were raped, houses were burned, while people suffocated inside or burned alive. I am standing here today to say explicitly that war crimes are violation of basic human rights. Holding civilians without medical care and basic needs is a blunt violation of human rights. Breaking into our armed civilian houses with no ability of self-defense is a violation of human rights. And I, after a month without my parents, wait to have them back. I know I will have to sit with them in the hospital for a few months. It's absurd that people talking about humanitarian rights that we don't know anything about our loved ones, and Hamas is refusing to provide evidence of my parents and all the hostages, even not a sign of life. I want to ask your help with pressuring and pushing the release in front of Hamas men that are unwilling to let us see our loved ones again as soon as possible. Thank you.
Now, Adva Adal.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adva Adal, and I'm the cousin of Adal. He is the father of 2 young children. He's the father of 2 young children, and on October 7th, he left them in the safe room with his wife and went to protect his friends. We haven't heard anything about him ever since. I'm also the granddaughter of Yafana. My grandmother is 85 years old and lived by herself in Kibbutz. She was kidnapped from her house, from the place that was supposed to be the most safe for her. 4 terrorists took her on a golf cart. Armed terrorists took her from her bed. My grandmother is ill. She's taking medication on a daily basis for her body systems to function and to relieve a lot of pain she's suffering from. I don't know how long can she survive without her medication. I do know that every minute for her is a nightmare. I do know that we can't let her die slowly, painfully, alone, being held hostage in Gaza.
that can't be the end of her story. She doesn't deserve it. No one deserves to die in her age, in her condition, alone, being held hostage. I'm asking you to look at my grandmother's face and think about your own grandmother. Can you even imagine her captive in Gaza, in this inhuman situation? Can you please understand that the clock is ticking? My grandmother has no time. Please don't look at the other way. Shout your shout and demand a return back home now. We need to do whatever it takes to bring them back. Use sanction on the Hamas leadership and make sure they understand there is no other way but bringing the hostages back home. We ask the Red Cross to get involved, meet the hostages, check their medical condition, and bring them medication and medical care. Humanitarian supply that enters to Gaza should be only attacked with humanitarian supplies to our hostages. We won't accept any ceasefire without the release of the hostages. For my grandmother and a lot of other hostages, it might not be tomorrow. We need to bring them home back now. Thank you.
Next, we'll ask Professor Justice Aharon Barak to come to the podium and offer his observation.
Let me make 3 points. The first one has to do with a letter I sent 10 days ago to the President of the International Red Cross. I know her. She knows me. And in this letter I wrote what I think are the obligations of the Red Cross. She's heading. Let me just cite from my letter. I urge the Red Cross to take a strong stand as far as the Israelis kidnapped 2 weeks ago from Israel to Gaza and held by the Hamas. It is the duty of Hamas to allow the Red Cross to visit the 203 Israelis who were captured by them, including kids, elderly people, to provide us their names and to release them. Yesterday she called me back. We had a long talk. She said that she was very happy to get my letter. She said that the Red Cross is doing as much as they can to fulfill their duties, but of course they have not an enforcement power. She told me that she knows me very well, and she read my articles, and I think even I met her twice in Basel. She is a graduate, she has a PhD from the Basel University. And we closed our meeting, our talk, I said that let's keep in touch. And so I say to you, those who are involved in the activities, to use this link we have with the Red Cross. She told me apropos that they are in a very strong connection with the Israeli army's legal advisors to see that all the requirements of the international humanitarian law are fulfilled. Which brings me to the second point. Needless to say that what Hamas has done is in violation of international humanitarian law. I don't think I have to add too much. It's basically as near as one can have to genocide. But I want, and that's my third point, to stress that to the best of my knowledge, based of course of what I see in the Israeli radio, TV, and reading Israeli papers, not more, I have no direct link to what's going on. But to the best of my knowledge from the information I do have, the Israeli army complies with the international humanitarian law in its fight in Gaza. Because here, I think people don't realize that, yes, Israel is obliged to fulfill international humanitarian law. We in the Supreme Court have many, many judgments to this effect. And the Israeli army knows it, and they advise the Israeli army, and as I said, I do think that those rules are fulfilled. There is a duty, of course, on every army to see to it that the collateral damages would be as little as possible. And I wrote a lot about collateral damages, and to the best of my knowledge, the army fulfills it. Collateral damages is not based on numbers. If the Israeli army kills 10 and they kill 5, then we reach the collateral damages rule. That's not the way to see. It is basically a proportionality test. It is basically a test which takes into account the needs to fulfill the purpose of the army and the needs to take into account the life of innocent people. And the Israeli army was educated very well that those tests, or these tests of balancing, will be fulfilled. So I do hope that the world will understand in the situation we are in. We have an enemy who violates every rule of international humanitarian law. And we have an army who tries, sometimes mistakes are done, of course, who tries not to kill civilians, innocent civilians, and who is obliged to minimize the collateral damages as they can, and they do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justice Barak. Now we'll go to Zoom, where we have waiting Professor Eyal Ben-Venisti. Eyal, bevakasha.
Hello. I wish to describe the position of international law with respect to the abduction of civilians and their forced disappearance. I will talk about the definition of crimes and about the responsibility of states and other actors. First, about war crimes and crimes against humanity perpetrated against the hostages. Article 7 of the Statute of the International Criminal Court provides a list of crimes against humanity. Beyond crimes such as murdering, torturing, and raping civilians, here are the specific crimes related to the taking of and holding of hostages perpetrated systematically against the civilian population in the vicinity of the border with Gaza on and since the 7th of October. First, imprisonment or other severe deprivations of physical liberty in violation of fundamental rules of international law. Then, enforced disappearance of persons. Enforced disappearance is defined as the arrest, detention, or abduction of persons by or with the authorization, support, or acquiescence of a state or a political organization, followed by a refusal to acknowledge the deprivation of freedom or to give information on the fate or whereabouts of those persons with the intention of removing them from the protection of the law for a prolonged period of time. Then, persecution, which means the intentional and severe deprivation of fundamental rights contrary to international law by reason of the identity of the group or collectivity. Then, transfer of population without grounds permitted under international law. And finally, other inhumane acts intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body or to mental or physical harm. This was the list of crimes against humanity. Now to the defined war crimes by the same statute. These include unlawful deportation or transfer or unlawful confinement, then the taking of hostages, and finally committing outrages upon personal dignity. To these crimes, the holding of hostages violate also a number of international human rights treaties, such as the Convention Against Torture, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Let me move to the question of responsibility. Obviously, all individuals are criminally responsible for war crimes and crimes against humanity that they commit. Beyond this, the Hamas, as a political and military organization in control over the Gaza Strip, is responsible under international law for any violations and crimes committed by its agents, and it is now responsible for the human rights of individuals held within the territory under its control. This has been acknowledged by the United Nations Secretary General and by several UN Special Rapporteurs who have called upon Hamas to release all hostages immediately and unconditionally. Finally, I want to address the question of responsibility of other states and of international organizations. Crimes against humanity are crimes against humanity. It is humanity, each and every one of us, who is a victim, because the very idea of human dignity is violated by such crimes, and it is continued to be dishonored as we speak. This can explain why under international law of state responsibility, all states can regard themselves as directly injured by such crimes, and they have the right to respond. But it's not only the right to respond, there is also a responsibility to respond. Under general international law, and specifically under international humanitarian law, all states, including those that are not parties to a conflict, are under an obligation to ensure that the requirements of the law are complied with. And this is acknowledged by the International Court of Justice. Let me read from Article 38, Paragraph 1 of the Convention on the Right of the Child, which is particularly telling and to the point in this context. In this article, states parties undertake to respect and to ensure respect for rules of international humanitarian law applicable to them in armed conflict which are relevant to the child. So anywhere on earth where child are being deprived of their rights, under international law, state parties have the obligation to respect and to ensure those rights. It is the responsibility of all states to do all in their power to end the continuous commission of crimes against humanity and war crimes, and to prosecute the perpetrators. It is the responsibility of the Red Cross and UN treaty bodies and other UN actors to do the utmost to end the commission of these crimes. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker will be Justice Dalit Bainey.
We just heard now a very clear legal analysis of the situation under international law, and I think we can nothing add. It's so clear that all that we are discussing are crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes against and war crimes. October 7th, almost a month ago, was the international community received a war sign. Warning of danger to states in the world, to every human being, is what happened here, and we have to realize it. What happened on that day was a brutal attack on innocent civilians who celebrated a holiday with friends and families. Babies, kids, their parents, mothers and grandmothers were murdered, shot in the beds, wounded and kidnapped by war criminals. Don't be mistaken. Don't mix it with war for freedom of anyone. This is not a war for freedom. This was a cruel massacre, monstrous, perpetrating war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, universal crimes. You don't need to be an expert on international law to identify the behavior of Hamas as war crimes, worse than ISIS, crimes which we never saw before. Those are crimes against humanity, against every human being. Anyone can be the next victim. A terror organization that keeps babies, children, and elderly women and as hostages without medical care that they need, no access to the Red Cross, to medical treatment, or any information, even information about their fate and their conditions. We demand all the states, as we heard now from the legal point of view and from the human point of view, from all international organizations, from every country who is a member in our international community, to insist to immediate and unconditional release of the kidnapped hostages. Moreover, every state, every civilized organization in society has to stop any assistance to Hamas and to ban their inciting propaganda, which is now spreading all over the world. Time is at the essence. We demand urgent proactivity. It's a matter of life and death to save and release them as quick as possible, and the Hamas has no right to put conditions for their release. I'm sure that every state that knows what happened is bound to act immediately to release not only their own citizens that are captured there, and we know that there are many, many citizens of other states, everybody who were just captured because they were there, but all of them, no matter if they're Israelis or others, all of them are kept in the hands of cruel, inhuman war criminals. I think that we are expecting everybody to cooperate and to do everything with sanctions, to put all the power of states to stop this crazy, cruel world that we found now, we saw them now, and I think all the communities in the world, organizations, states, formal and informal, should cooperate as quick as possible to make an end to this nightmare. We wish it will really be very quick and very efficient.
Thank you, Justice Bainey. Shelley Aviv.
Dear families, honorable justices, and esteemed colleagues here with me. First, my heart goes out to the families who have been forced to deal with this nightmare for the last 28 days. I owe it to them to call upon the international community to demand the release of their loved ones. The term international community is rooted in an ethical and moral considerations, a community of values which, when disrupted, requires a decisive response. The brutal, premeditated attack, the kidnapping of civilians in their own homes, constitute gross violations of international law, as well as the gravest violations of international criminal law. In the wake of the unbearable atrocities of the Holocaust, the international community gathered and declared, never again. Never again. Much of modern international law has been shaped by the lessons learned from the tragedy of the Jewish people. Regrettably, we now find ourselves facing another instance of widespread and systematic targeting of Jewish people as such, including women, children, and the elderly. This is a ruthless and horrifying attack by terrorists who deliberately aim at civilian population. The Hostages and Missing Persons Families Forum has consistently and assertively engaged with the international community, demanding proactive action to ensure the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages held in Gaza by Hamas. In response to our call, over 300 distinguished international legal experts have endorsed the assertion that Hamas actions amount to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and most probably genocide. More than 700 experts have supported our plea for the immediate release of kidnapped children and infants. Over 30 children under the age of 18 are kept by Hamas as hostages, including 5 infants under the age of 3. 5 children under the age of 3 are hostages of Hamas. Let this sink in. Do you have children? Can you even imagine? We have submitted multiple requests on behalf of the families to various United Nations entities, including the Secretary General, the High Commissioner of Human Rights, and the President of the Human Rights Council, as well as the President of the International Committee of the Red Cross, UNICEF, and Amnesty International. We approached UN mandate holders, such as the Working Group on Enforced and Involuntary Disappearances, the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. There are persons with life-threatening conditions held by Hamas in Gaza, such as breast cancer, heart failure, brain tumors, and life-threatening injuries. They need to be treated now, immediately. We requested all mandate holders to exercise their mandate to demand the immediate release of the hostages. We contacted NGOs, civil society organizations, and people of influence to demonstrate solidarity and to act for the release of the hostages. We've also approached individual states, asking them to take all possible measures to resolve the situation immediately. Our efforts have encountered tremendous support from the Israeli academia, which is all-heartedly dedicated to secure the release of the hostages, especially the legal clinics. We do hope that the global academia will follow suit. We call upon the international community to take a clear and unwavering stance to act decisively to release all hostages. We need your help. The families, the captives, need your help. If the chair of the international community is to have a real significance, then never again must truly mean never again.
Thank you, Shelley. Now we have Advocate Yuval Sasson.
Releasing the hostages is not just a matter of fighting and diplomacy. Everyone should ask himself, what can I do to further the cause? Everyone should ask himself this question every and single morning. When the world said never again, it has created opportunities, not only to prevent and punish in years to come, also to effectively fight genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. We are used to the wheels of justice turning slow. There is no time, and the wheels of justice must turn swiftly. We urge the world to take any possible action to further the pressure on Hamas to release them now. Hamas crimes, as we've heard, are crimes against humanity. As such, they are universal by nature, meaning every and any country has jurisdiction over the matter. Every single country in the world. Hamas has said to kill every Israeli and every Jew. By this, they have committed the crime of genocide. But the crimes were not just taken against Israelis. They were taken against human beings, infants, children, women, men, and elders. Among those abducted, there are Americans, German, French, Argentinian, Russian, British, Dutch, Chinese, Polish, Tanzanian, Colombian, South African, Serbian, Spanish, Chilean, Austrian, Danish, Swiss, Austrian, Canadian, Mexican, Romanian, Portuguese, Thai, all citizens of the world who are just dancing, loving, hugging, sleeping, dreaming, working, when help came upon them and the devil abducted them and committed other heinous crimes to them. The legal system has teeth. If these teeth will not bite now, then when? We are acting to ensure that those responsible, directly and indirectly, as aiders and abettors, financiers, supporters of Hamas ideology, all must be tried and brought to justice. All must pay a price. Our actions are not just set against those that no language has a word to define or to describe what they have done, their atrocities. Our actions are against their leaders, sitting in 5-star hotels and traveling in private jets. Our actions are against those that finance them, that still are financing them. Those that willfully turned a blind eye, those that supported them, those that are supporting them now, in any way or manner. All of the above cannot continue with their daily business right now. Pressure must be put on all of them immediately to have them act to release the kidnapped now. The world has to act. Western society must act. Any nation adhering to the rule of law must act. The international legal community must act. International organizations must act. This needs to be done yesterday in order to help bring them home, those held by the Hamas, and then tomorrow to help bring justice. Being idle is not an option. There is a list of actions of immediate effect, a list of actions that any of the states that I mentioned before, and so many other states, must take now. International arrest warrants must be taken out. Extradition requests, freezing of assets, sanctions, declarations of Hamas aiders and abettors as terrorist organizations and terrorist supporters. They cannot continue with their daily business. Once we put pressure not only on the ones that are holding the hostages, once we put the pressure on anyone supporting them, anyone aiding them, anyone abetting for this, then they will in turn put pressure on the people holding the kidnapped in order to release them. This is the action that must be taken now, not in years to come. The tools are out there. Those sitting in hotels, those traveling with jets, those paying all of them, must stop doing it now. We ask the world to take a stand, because it is our kids and your kids, our babies and your babies, our mothers and your mothers, our sisters and your sisters. And because if you don't act now, tomorrow it will happen to you. We plan to work together to swiftly build an international League of Justice and help bring them home now.
Thank you. Our final speaker is General Elan.
Dear families, my hearts go to you. Following the tragic massacre crudely orchestrated by the terrorist organization Hamas on October 7th, we found ourselves in a state of profound sorrow and anger. A malicious attempt by the terrorist organization to target us solely because of our Jewish identity has not only taken us by surprise, but has also deepened the sense of loss and pain in our community. However, we firmly believe that pain and sorrow should not define our course of action. In response, my friends and I, and when I say my friends, experts in law enforcement, content data, software specialists, all joined together in order to establish this kind of site dedicated to Hamas crime against humanity. In response, my friend and I have made a deliberate choice to channel our anguish and outrage towards collection of primary evidence documenting the horrors that transpired. This body of evidence will serve as foundational support for the grave accusation against the terrorist organization Hamas, which encompass crime of genocide, war crime, and crime against humanity. this trailer was created by Uri Shinar, my friend and other friends of his, and is the trailer for the site we established. This is a soft version of what you can see in this secure site, which is aimed, this website is dedicated to documenting the Hamas crimes with the primary purpose of unifying the international community in demanding that Hamas and their international enablers release the hostage unharmed and without further delay now. I'll briefly show you how the site looks like. Just don't want you to expose to the categories that are in the site, but believe me, you don't want to see it. It's a secure site, as I mentioned. Throughout history, there have been moments when the world stood silent in the face of unimaginable horrors. We, however, are resolute in our determination not to remain silent. It is our solemn duty to present the world with the indisputable evidence that lays bare of the evil deeds, the brutality, the murder, the animalistic violence exhibited by the terrorist organization known as Hamas ISIS.
We've now concluded the presentations by our speakers. Thank you very much to all of you and to the members of the family who shared their thoughts. We're going to conclude now with singing the Israel national anthem, Hatikva.
everybody.